fun movie. Oh, you got to rent. Seriously, got to rent. Now, at first, I was a little cynical about the movie because it's magic, and I was born and raised in Las Vegas, and everything's a show in Las Vegas. Okay, so you know, I mean, all right, you know, unless a lion drags you off the stage by your neck, it's really not all that exciting to me. You know, I mean, I'm sorry, that's the way I am. I'm a bit cynical about shows like that. Now, now, how many people have seen? How many people saw? What was it? Man of Steel was the first one, right? Michael Jackson today. How many people saw that one? How many people saw World War Z? Zombie fans, yes. So that was a good movie. That was really. I don't care if you don't like zombies. Pastor Suzanne doesn't like zombies, but she liked that movie. So that was a good movie. If you haven't seen it, that's a good one. And then we did The Lone Ranger. How many people went and saw that one? All right. Okay, it wasn't as bad as they said it was it? No, no. Now, just how many of you, since we've done this series, have looked at the movies just a little bit different when you go to movies? Are you looking for God themes? Are you looking for stuff? Because this movie was full of them. I mean, it just starts right from the beginning, and it just goes right on through the whole movie. And it is kind of centered around magic. It's all about the show. You know, it's magic. Last time in first service, I did that like that, and I spit popcorn all the way over to Pastor Scott. It was great. It was total magic. It's great. It's magic. And the whole thing is, and I'm not going to give away the movie because I want you to go see this one. The whole theme is that these four hack magicians get called into this bigger plan. And they don't know who the plan maker is. All they know that at the end of this road, if they're all in on this plan, that something huge is going to happen in their lives, and they're going to be called up to a higher level of magicianship or whatever. You know, I mean, it's like the secret magician society. And they're getting called into this bigger plan. But it takes them being all in for this plan to work. Okay, they don't get a choice of you're sort of in or not in. You're either in or you're not. You know, and so they have to make a giant leap of faith to be in on this plan. And they put it all on the line. They put their reputations, their freedom, they put everything on the line to live out this plan. And that's kind of the theme of the whole thing. Now, what's really interesting about this movie, and I think what we need to pick apart a little bit today, to kind of go with this scripture, is that there's different types of people in this movie. They're kind of in categories a little bit. There's these kind of half-hearted magicians that are kind of, you know, they don't know if they're in or out, and they kind of decide to be in, so that's kind of cool. Then there's the profiteers. There's the people that they're going to make money off the show. They're going to profit some way, somehow, off being near these magicians when they're doing their thing. And that's okay, you know, that happens. Then there's the cynics, and there's a few in this movie. They just want to pick apart the magic. They want to suck all the magic out of the trick and reveal all the secrets to everybody and show everybody that it's just tricks. You know? And then there's the audience. And they're just there to be entertained first. They really are. They're there to be entertained, but then the magicians start giving stuff away, and it's like Oprah, you know, I might have a key to a car under my seat, you know? So they're showing up, and bigger crowds, because these guys are like throwing money at them in their magic tricks. So they're getting something out of it, so they're really excited about coming down. And the funny thing about it is that Jesus had the same kinds of people following him. You would have thought he was a magic act in the first century. He had the same folks coming at him. He had these kind of folks that were just kind of, you know, hanging out, and maybe you'll learn a trick or two from him, and they're kind of half-hearted in. They don't know whether they want to make the leap or not. He had big folks that were all in. He had profiteers. He had people kind of hanging on because they would benefit somehow by being near him. And then he had the cynics, the ones that always had to be right. And the only reason they were there was to argue. It wasn't about what was right and what was wrong. It was about me being right. Me being there to argue with you about what you're doing. Because I have to be right. Those kind of people, you know, you might be. I've been there. And then there's the crowd. They're just following him at first because there ain't a lot of things to do in first century Palestine. So, you know, when a prophet shows up, we're there. You know, hey, it's entertainment. We're up. We're there. But Jesus is doing things for people. He's healing them. He's feeding them. He's doing all kinds of cool God stuff, right? So they're there, they're in, and they're in bigger and bigger crowds, and they're following it. But before Jesus came on the scene, see, God has always sent prophets to the people of God. A lot of the Old Testament's written by them. And they did miraculous things. They had kind of gods. They were magicians of a sort, if you want to put that label on. They were fortune tellers, mind readers, healers, miracle workers, magicians. And they had all these God signs. All these God signs so that you would know. That was the proof that they were from God. And that's what the signs were for. They weren't meant to entertain. They weren't meant to do anything. They were meant to say, yeah, you know what? I've got the power of God on my side, and you need to listen to what I'm saying. Because this message is awesome. And God would send these prophets, but for centuries in Palestine, the people of God had been like a dark area. No prophets had showed up. And then all of a sudden, this one guy comes out of the woodwork, John the Baptist. And John the Baptist comes out, all the signs of a prophet. He's preaching, repent. You come on out into the wilderness. He'll preach to you. He'll dunk you underwater. He'll say, the kingdom of God is near. Repent. And he was calling, and I'm imagining he showed some signs of being a prophet because they kept coming to him. They kept listening to him, and he was the God show, right? And then John got arrested. And Jesus is out preaching. And John even said, he said, you know, I'm just the opening act. The big show's fixing to come. The big show's coming, and that's Jesus. And I'm not even worthy to tie his sandals. He's the real show. I'm just here to introduce him. But something happened. Jesus was on the road, and they get news that John's been arrested. And I think, if I had to guess, he heard some people talking about John, just kind of writing him off. Like, yeah, he's a prophet, but I guess he wasn't that good of a prophet because they arrested him, didn't they? He's in jail now, but we got the big show. We got the Jesus show here. Why do we need John? Whatever. And that was Jesus' cousin. Jesus gets active. He gets mad. And it's one of the few times you really see Jesus a little bit upset. And he looks at him and he goes, well, what happens if they arrest me? What happens if they, crucify me? Are you going to write me off too? All these signs and wonders, just that so much entertainment for you? And he looks at me and says, when you went out in the wilderness to see John, what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yeah, I tell you, he's more than a prophet. And I didn't put it in here for room's sake, but you need to go read it. He said, among men born to women, there was no one greater than John. And you wrote him off? You wrote him off that quick because the show was over? You weren't getting something out of it all of a sudden? Is that what you're here for? He said, to what then can I compare the people of this generation? What are they like? And he really kind of tells them off. He says, they're like children sitting in the marketplace and calling out to each other. We played the pipe for you and you didn't dance. We sang a dirge and you didn't cry. Play for us, Jesus boy. What's wrong with you? Why is the show over all of a sudden? And Jesus, what he's saying to him, he's saying, are you just here to be entertained? Are you just here for what you can get from it? Are you here because you'll profit somehow by being near me? Are you here just to argue with me? Because if that's all you're here for, you're going to miss the whole person, the whole purpose, the whole person that I am. You're going to miss everything. You're going to miss what we're really calling you into. Because what happens if I just go, the show's over, folks, and I quit doing things for you? All of a sudden you don't have any faith. You don't believe in God. You're going to quit coming? Quit learning? That's a hard critique. And it's easy for us to sit back and look back centuries, actually 2 millennia, and critique these people, but we have to ask ourselves those same hard questions. We really do. We really need to search our hearts when we come to church, when we come and be a part of something like this that God is calling people into. And we really need to ask ourselves some really hard questions. The first one would be this, what do we want from God? What are we really, really here for? And no one here is going to judge you. Understand that. No one here has the right to judge you. I don't have the right to judge you. No one does. have the responsibility to judge yourself. What are you really, really here for? And I have mixed motivations all the time, so I'm not calling anyone out. My motivations fluctuate all the time. But if you were to say one thing, what are you getting out of this? Are you here for what you're getting out of it? Are you here for the entertainment? Because we make great music. Sing real loud. It's awesome to get a little Jesus in your heart. Are you here for what the church can do for you? Are you here because somehow, some way you profit off of this? It's good for you. Are you here just to argue? I'm good at arguing. Yes, I am. We really need to search our hearts and ask ourselves, why are we really here? Because if we just said the show's over, did anything change for you? Did you grow in your faith at all? Were you more willing to give to God? Were you more willing to make the leap if the show's over all of a sudden? Maybe the question isn't what do we want from God. Maybe the question we have to start asking ourselves is, what does God want from us? We're sometimes so self-centered and so self-motivated that we fool ourselves into thinking we're religious, and we forget to ask this question: what does God want from me? You know, it's completely the difference between being a passive recipient or an active participant. And you know what? It's okay to come sometimes because of what this does for you. We can't stay there. We miss the whole purpose if we stay there. And Jesus calls us out. He loves us enough to call us out. Right? It's you know, maybe we need to stop asking for God to give us stuff and start asking God what He wants us to give. Maybe we need to quit blaming God for not being faithful, and maybe we need to start looking at ourselves and ask ourselves, how faithful are we? Because if we haven't made that click, we're missing something. Because if this all goes away tomorrow, what's going to happen to your faith? What's going to happen to your relationship with God? Will you have changed? Will you have grown? Will you follow God back? There's a word for that. It's disciple. Follower of Jesus Christ. You know, pastors, and we'll argue about this later. This is just my definition. Pastors have tried to define this word to know it. And we struggle when we go, what is a disciple? What does one really, really look like? And so I took a hack. Okay, just forgive me if you want to argue, we'll argue later. It says someone who in ever-increasing measure is giving themselves over to the will of God, and by that action becoming their true self. Do you want to continue on in this journey just being a passive recipient? Because you're welcome to. No one's going to call you out on that or anything like that. Not right away. Or do you want to be an active participant? Do you want to be audience member or performer? Because I can tell you what's in store for us at the end of the line when we jump in with both feet is worth anything we would give up to get there. Anything. Are you willing to give yourself up to the will of God in ever-increasing measure? I understand there's parts of me that I think I'm all in sometimes, and then I know, and then God reveals to me, well, really, you're not all in. There's still some things you're kind of holding on to, aren't you? And so it's a journey. But are you willing to take some steps towards it? Ask yourself. Because if you are, then the next question you need to ask yourself is, how do I find out what the will of God is for me? I mean, if I'm going to throw myself at this, if I'm going to be all in, because that's when the real magic happens, is when we're all in, then how do I find out the will of God? I think, really, just some quick steps. I think it all starts with one thing. If we're gonna find out what the will of God, maybe we need to look at the poster child for the will of God, which is Jesus. No one was more all in than Jesus. And so if we're going to figure out how to find out the will of God for our lives, maybe we need to look at the one who was completely in. And it starts with this thing, and it sounds a little trite, but it starts with prayer. You want to pray a crazy prayer? Ask God to show you what His will is for your life. Do it. I mean, we ask God for all kinds of stuff. Give me this, give me that, fix that, heal me, do this, do that. We treat God like a big cosmic vending machine sometimes, and you know what? In our hearts, He starts to become that. Ask God, treat God like He's the living God of the universe who actually has a big plan for us. See what happens. Because last January, the leadership of this church sat in this very room, and they started praying that stupid prayer, and I couldn't stop them, even though I'm going, shut up. He's listening. And they started praying around it because we're all scratching our heads going, well, we've completed all our strategic objectives, we've done all that. What are we going to do as a church now? And they started praying this prayer. We said, well, let's pray. And that sounded like a good thing to do. So we all held hands, and they started going around in a circle. They started going, dear Lord, please just do something we know that it can only be you. And I'm going, shut up! He's hearing this. Do you know what you're unleashing now? And they all prayed the prayer. And I had to go along with it because I was there. And I'm a pastor, so I had to say it too. And within 2 weeks, Pastor Suzanne's FEMA grant, $1 million FEMA grant for a storm shelter comes through, and we have to get $234,000 to make that a reality. Within 2 weeks, we get the news that something that we've always wanted to do, which was launch another campus, comes open to us, and we have to launch a campus by Labor Day. Would you quit praying those prayers? You know who you are. You're in here. Some of you. That's what happens. When you ask God for the will of God, that happens. And you know what? If Jesus had to do it, we should do it. Jesus, the Son of God, the one who is the most connected, the most all in, went to a mountainside to pray and spent all night doing it. And most of the time, if I'm honest, most of my prayers are about doing something for me, God. Cosmic vending machine. Let's do some dangerous prayers. See what happens. I dare you. I dare you to do this. Say, God, treat Him like the living God He is, like He has a plan. And if you're going to pray, you might want to try being a little more aware. I love that song, The Focus. And it spoke all about this. Try being a little more aware. Jesus spoke all the time. If you read the Gospels, it's quite important to read the Gospels. Read the Gospels. He says, those who have eyes to see, let them see. And those who have ears to hear, let them hear. He's saying, you know what? This is a discipline. You have to teach yourself on a daily basis how to open yourself up to the Spirit of God. And each and every one of us have the ability to do this. And the danger in all that is sometimes we're so stinking lazy with that. I know, because I can go weeks at a time and not try to listen to God. Go, I know what I'm doing. I know I can tune out for like weeks, and I'm a pastor. And I get so mad at myself when I do it. I know we can do this. We can do it. When I tune into the will of God, I start seeing things happen. When I open my eyes and my ears, I start seeing things happen. And if we're lazy about it, and we all have this person in our lives who's spiritually attuned, right? We all have that guy in our lives that's telling us what God's will for us is, right? Well, God told me you should be doing this. What is God telling you? Because Jesus warns us about this, right? He said, you know what? Can the blind lead the blind? Will they not both fall into a pit? Students are not above their teacher, but all who are fully trained will be like their teacher. It's a discipline. We have to teach ourselves every morning, every hour. Teach ourselves to tune in. And we can all do this. And if you're going to, it's not just enough to pray and be aware, though. You have to act. You have to go in the direction of your prayer. You have to go in the direction of what you know about the will of God. And see what, because God's not going to do anything if you don't step up. God just works that. Have you ever, and I've said this, okay, have you ever met somebody that complained, some big tragedy happens, some natural disaster, some injustice occurs, and we go, if God really cared, He wouldn't let that happen. I've done that. Have you done? I've done that. You don't have to return. I wonder sometimes if God doesn't look at us and ask the same thing about us. They really care. Why don't they do something about that? You know, we want things to happen. But if God was to step in and repair something, fix something, would we manage that blessing? Or would it just go all back to situation normal when we didn't do anything about it? Why would God bless something that we're not willing to manage? But when we step into the prayer, when we step into the will of God, God responds and comes along beside us. Jesus said it this way. He said, do not judge, and you will not be judged. If you don't want a world where people are judged and they're accepted, try not judging yourself. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be used towards you. God demands that we step into what He's blessing, or He's not gonna. He's not gonna bless it. Why would He if we're going to be faithless? And as far as things being unfair, Jesus is perfectly, read Luke 6 and 7, because that's where all this comes from. He is perfectly clear that when someone suffers in this life, suffers some ill or injustice, that God makes it up. That God's got it. He's perfectly clear. So as far as the injustice and stuff, God's waiting for us to step up. You know, Pastor Suzanne has got this saying about having skin in the game. I like it. You know, this church, from the beginning when we started this church, we had said that we want to be a church that launches other churches that are like this, that create the environment where people can come to know Christ, can connect in a meaningful way, and their faith can start to grow. And a lot of you have been recipients of that blessing right here, because we're only 5 years old. And a lot of you have come in, found Christ in a new and profound way, and started to grow, and your lives have been transformed by it. And we know that we need to carry that blessing forward to the next thing. And the Massive campus, it's coming up. And it ain't the only one. There'll be one after that, and one after that, and one after that, because that's what God calls us to do, to create environments where people can come to know Him. And you know what? We need to have a little skin in it. If this is the vision, and you're on board with that, if this is the vision that God has given this church, and it is, give, and it will be given to us. Press down, shaken over. Have a little skin in the game. That's what this is about. This launch fund. This is over and above what we normally give. And Pastor Suzanne and I are going to give the top amount. So you know we have some skin in the game. Put a little skin in the game and see what God does with us. You know, there's one last step. For the will of God, you have to look at results. You really do. God asks us to look and see what the fruit of what we did was. There's a lot of churches in the world that are doing a lot of great things, or great sounding things, with little or no result. Why would they continue to do that? You can have Bible study after Bible study after Bible study. And you know what my question is? Are you more loving and graceful at the end of that Bible study? Have you helped someone? Do you have a more generous spirit after that? Because if not, why are you doing Bible studies? Why don't you go serve the poor? Maybe that'll help. And if that doesn't help, go do something else. If at the end of next year, we are more loving, peaceful, patient, kind, joyful, generous, faithful, self-control, all the fruit of the Spirit, if we aren't in a year, then what are we doing? If we're not growing, we're dead. And so we have to look at the results of what we're doing. That's how we measure things in church. And if it has zero results or minimal results, and we can put more energy towards something else in the church, we'll kill it. we won't do it. We'll go put our energy, because we're called to manage the blessings of God. Jesus says this. He says, no tree bears bad fruit. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. Good people bring good things out of the good stored in their heart, and evil people bring evil things out of the evil stored in their heart. So if you're going to judge yourself, judge the fruit of what's going on in your life. What's coming out? Is it different than before? Because if it's not, you have to ask yourself a really hard question. Am I in the will of God? You know, Jesus loved. He loved the cynic. He loved the ones that were half in. He loved the profiteers. He loved the crowd. He loved them enough to tell them the truth. He said, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I say? Why would you call me master? Because that's what that word means. Why would you call me master? Place yourself in a servant role with me and not do anything I'm asking you to do. Because I got enough of that. I got enough audience. I got an audience for years. I don't need any more audience. I need performers. I need people that are going to take that step and be all in ever-increasing measure. Do that with magic.